spiritual unity through the metaphor of immigration. For many of the people he was talking to, this was a literal movement they had gone through. They had been far away and had come to Jerusalem, to the Jewish faith, and found God that way. He was talking to Jews who were spread throughout the world, to Gentiles who were coming to believe in God. So it was a literal movement that they had gone through. But he's also talking spiritually about how all of us, whether we've lived in the same place our whole lives or not, if we are in the church, if we are in Christ, we were foreigners, we were excluded, and we have been brought near. It's not on account of anything that we have done. It's a gracious gift that was extended to us. So this I think really illustrates well how the gospel is not bound by borders, by nationalities, by anything like that. We were all once totally separate from the life of Christ and have been included into that, and that is something we can offer to anybody around us. And we have a mandate to offer to anybody around us. We've already talked a little bit about how God moves people as part of his mission to the world. And Paul says in Acts that from one man, God made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times and histories and the boundaries of the lands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him. But he is not far from any one of us. So God sets where people are. God moves people. Sometimes they move for good causes or for bad causes, for moral reasons or for sinful reasons. But ultimately, God is the mover. He sets where people are going to be and where they will go. And he does this for his evangelistic purposes. And we can see that carried out in reality. People are much more likely to become believers when they move from one place to another than if they're near where they are. For all the missions work we've done in Mexico over the years, about 3% of Mexico is evangelical. That number jumps to about 40% for Mexicans who have moved to the United States and their children. So it really, the act of moving changes people, and the movement of people opens up entirely new nations and people groups to the gospel. We want to be part of looking for the work that God is doing in terms of his mission and participating in it rather than stepping away. And finally, the church. We are a church denomination. We are serving the church. We believe in action through and for the local church and God's agents on earth. You can see here's one passage that talks about the church. For in one spirit we were all baptized into one body. Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and all were made to drink of one spirit. And then later he continues, if one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. So I really appreciated what you had said about your church in France, having all of the different people groups and how rich that was. Really appreciated some of what you were talking about with the native church and what they were bringing to the table, and some of the interplay between the native church and the white American church. I really believe that the future of our church will be significantly strengthened as we integrate these people who are coming from all around the world with different spiritual experiences, different cultures that have different strengths and weaknesses, different access to people groups. Having that sort of diversity in our church, built into our church, united in our church, will make our church effective and allow it to survive and thrive in the coming generations. The very act of reaching across some of these lines that divide us, like Peter reaching out to Cornelius in Acts 10, that very act itself is a demonstration of the gospel. So while it may be easier to talk to somebody who's like you, when you go and intentionally reach out to somebody who is not like you, who is separate from you, that is a gospel demonstration itself. So if we can live like that within our church, I believe it will build our church stronger. And it's already happened. There are, like I said, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Hispanic evangelicals in the United States, Africans, Asians. They are already part of our body, let alone the millions and billions overseas. This is already something that's happening within our body. And we need to start paying attention to the pain and the opportunity that's inherent with immigration. So that's a lot of scripture and a lot of ideas to jump through really quickly. But I just wanted to show you how even a kind of cursory look at scripture and some of the principles of the Old Testament and the New Testament have a lot to say about how we have an obligation and an opportunity to respond to the immigration situation in the United States right now as something that's core to the mission of the church and of Christians. So this isn't something that the church needs to get into because it's politically expedient or socially popular, whatever. This is something that is about us and our mission and our identity, and as Christ followers, our discipleship. This is something that He is asking us to do. So one way that we can get involved with immigration is through Immigrant. So like I said, this is a program that was developed by the Evangelical Free Church of America. It is just one way the churches can creatively and proactively respond to immigration in a gospel-centered church way. So we wanted to provide an example and a pathway for churches that wanted to have that type of response. This is one way they can do it. There's a lot of other ways that churches can respond to reaching out to the immigrants in their community. This is just one. So we help churches establish legal aid clinics. I don't know if any of you have, well, I know some of you have, but I don't know how many of you moved from one country to another country. It's a very challenging experience bureaucratically to go through that. People compared it to doing your taxes in another language. So people who come to the United States have to navigate an extremely complex immigration system. They have to fill out applications, figure out what they qualify for, make sure everything is in order. A typical immigration application is going to be dozens, if not hundreds of pages of forms and documents. That's for somebody who married a U.S. citizen. You know, it's the most straightforward thing out there. It's still an extremely complicated process to go through. So what we're able to do is go to churches and train volunteers and workers in the churches to give immigration legal advice, to walk with people through figuring out what they qualify for, what they're at risk for, and maybe fill out applications if they're eligible for certain types of immigration visas or citizenship and things like that. So we are not working with people to evade the law, we're giving them the resources that they need to understand and follow the law, and have opportunity to work within our American immigration system in ways that they don't have access to because of their poverty or education or resources, situations, things like that. So we have 11 churches that we're working with right now. 7 of them have open offices and have served north of 2,000 immigrants in the last couple of years on dozens of different types of immigration petitions, everything from asylum cases through domestic violence visas and visas for citizens and spouses, or spouses of U.S. citizens, people becoming citizens, things like that. All different types of immigration visas. And it's been an opportunity for thousands of volunteer ministers in these churches to learn God's heart for serving immigrants, to have an opportunity to live out that discipleship experience, serving people who are different from them, because that's how God is leading. So you can see it's a real spread, and the immigrants we serve in Bloomington, Minnesota, where I work, are very different than the ones in McAllen, Texas, or the ones in New York. But this is something that's a need in every community, and it's a gospel opportunity in every community. Because all of these people who are coming in are coming to a church, are getting prayed with, hearing a gospel message, are invited to participate in the life of the church. We're doing this as an evangelistic outreach of the church, while also providing affordable, quality immigration legal help. So, just a quick point before I take some questions. We have a class coming up at the end of April, beginning of May, at our office in Minneapolis, for people who want to learn about the immigration legal system and how they can become an immigration legal advocate. We do a week-long, 40-hour introductory immigration law training, which is designed to train those sorts of people who don't have any legal background or immigration background, but are willing to really dig in and learn our system in a way that they can pass on to other people. So we do these classes about 3 times a year. We've trained hundreds of different immigration advocates from within churches and in a variety of other organizations around the country in understanding immigration law and how they can help guide people through it. We do not do it online. The Catholic Legal Immigration Network has an online version of the class. We do not. Okay. So, let me kick it back to you. I haven't really addressed some of the political hot button issues around immigration. That's kind of intentional because our concern is not politics, it's mission, it's church. But if there are questions about what I've talked about or other things that are really burning on your heart that are a barrier to you getting involved with this sort of ministry with these communities, I'd be happy to talk about any of that now if you have questions.
Are there immediate immigration needs right here in Bemidji or somewhere nearby that we should be aware of?
Are there immediate immigration needs right here in Bemidji or somewhere nearby that we should be aware of? I don't know a ton about Bemidji. I do know that there's a lot of international students at the colleges here. And very often that can be a really challenging experience, really alienating. I forget what the exact statistic is, but most foreign students who come through American universities will never enter the home of an American while they're here. So that's an opportunity to really connect with some lonely, disconnected people who are going through a really formative transitional time in their life and are open to, are going to be open spiritually and in a lot of other ways to some relationships and guidance. So that's a great opportunity right here in Bemidji. If we extend it out to St. Cloud or down to the Twin Cities, those are major hubs for refugee resettlement. And the refugee resettlement agencies are in a real crisis period right now with the decrease in resettlement that's happened over the last couple of years. That's meant their budgets have been cut about in half. And so there's all these refugees that they've been caring for that have been coming in over the years and refugees that are going to be coming in the future. But all these resettlement agencies have lost a lot of staff and a lot of resources. And most of them have active opportunities to partner with community members or churches to help care for the families that they're bringing in as refugees. So if that's something that you're interested in, I know there's Lutheran Social Services and Catholic Charities, I believe, in St. Cloud, and also down in the Twin Cities that can really use some support and some care that way. Okay? So at International Falls, you work in the library, and there's a lot of people coming through there with immigration situations needing help. A lot of people with American parents who were born in Canada because of the hospital situation up there. Okay, and there something that can be really helpful is just being people or churches that know how to get help for immigrants facing some of these challenges. So we have our immigration law clinic down in Bloomington that can help navigate people through a lot of that stuff. And there's about 20 other nonprofit organizations in the state of Minnesota that provide some of these low-cost services to people. And you can find those at immigrationlawhelp.org, which I have on a sheet back there if you need it. But just kind of getting educated in where people can get help if they do want to understand how to navigate and follow the law. How do they go about that? Can be a real service and a connection point to the community.
One of the things I think of immigration is we touched on the gospel opportunity that there is with all these people now in our front door that we might not be able to reach before we go in. My question is, when we go overseas as missionaries, we don't want to, let's say, convert Kenyans to American Christianity. We want them to be Kenyan Christians with their culture and language. So when there's immigrants coming to America,
balance cultures, especially with immigrants coming into the country and into churches. That is the fundamental challenge of immigrant churches going back through all time. So there's not an easy answer to it except to say that that is the work to be done when you're blending cultures in a church. How do you figure out how to make sure everybody's at home? How do you make sure how to figure out that you're united in gospel culture and disciple culture and not in whatever the dominant social culture is? And one of the real challenges for us as white people is we are so used to our culture being normal that when we really do come to a place of compromise and of genuinely welcoming other people, it feels like we are really giving up more than they are. Because so much of what we think of as normal is really white American. But us giving that up feels like we're going just way above and beyond. But if we want to get to a place where it is genuinely welcoming, where people genuinely do have a share in the life of our churches, we need to be willing to feel like we're sacrificing a lot to get there, because it's always going to feel like that for us. But yeah, that's a ton of what we do on my team in the national office, is help churches navigate that in a lot of different contexts, whether it's Hispanic. We work with the Evangelical Free Church in Fargo, integrating the Liberian congregation into their church. So there's a million different ways that gets worked out, but it's a lot. And one of the ideas that's helpful for that is becoming not just a multi-ethnic church, but a multicultural church. It's easy to say, okay, you people come and sit in our church, do it our way, or our culture. It's much harder to say, how do we make this your church as much as it is our church?
I think Bill Thomas touched on that in his other meeting.
Yes.
We've got to have all three biblical wisdom and do the truth in love.
Yeah.
And I think that another thing I wanted to mention, because we mentioned the social services and cafeteria, was concerned me about the refugee program with those two refugee organizations, is that I think they gave bad compromise with government funding, and that there was not, that they did not hospitalize the refugees.
Yep.
And I think that's a real concern to me, that they compromise the gospel on that.
Sure. But that does not stop the church from partnering with those organizations in ways that say we are going to build relationships with these families and these individuals in the long term. The church is not restricted from sharing the gospel as they provide care. It's these specific resettlement organizations are, so they can be a gateway for you into getting access and knowing where to focus your efforts, so that there is an evangelistic opportunity in that refugee resettlement process that's being missed right now. So yes, that is a challenge of working with some of those organizations, but there's still a huge amount of room for the church to work in an open and evangelistic way in those systems and circumstances. And I do want to, you were mentioning Bill's message before. I just wanted to say I'd like to co-sign everything that he presented there. In some ways, it's the furthest thing apart is the Native Americans versus with immigrants, but in other ways, it's two sides of the same coin. It's the same blending of cultures with all of this historical baggage and pain in both directions. But the gospel really does have an opportunity to break through some of that stuff and change it from a negative to a positive, showing the power of the gospel and the ability of Christ to overcome a lot of that pain. But we have to be willing to shine the gospel on ourselves and our practices and our assumptions and our fears as much as we are telling other people to come under Christ's submission as well. That's the real challenge, and the key to this is being willing to submit ourselves to Christ as much as we're asking other people to do it. So I just wanted to thank Bill for setting this up really well. And those are a lot of the principles that you can apply to any sort of situation like this. In fact, some people have been mentioning to me, one of the directors of our Hope office in Atlanta, Tim Bishop Isaacson attended this church for quite a long time, back before he moved down south, working with Native Americans, doing public health training on the reservation, and has applied a lot of those principles to reaching out to immigrants in the Atlanta area through Immigrant. So this church has actually been a part of establishing Immigrant kind of indirectly. So I think we're out of time, but I wanted to thank you guys very much for participating.